I went ahead and I took every single possible class of service on Amtrak's Northeast Corridor.
Coach class, business class, Acela business class, and first on the Acela.
Hello and welcome to another episode of MANTAR. Thank you all so much for coming back. If it's your first time, welcome to the show. And today we are returning, my friends, to the travel content. I am so excited. This has been in the works for a while. I took a little time off from traveling, but that meant I couldn't really do any travel content, but we have some things planned in the near future and a trip that I just took. So let's get on into it. And I made this episode because I actually geek out about train travel. I do love to travel by train. I think it's comfortable. It's a great way to see the country. It's a great way to see whatever country you might be traveling in. And so we're starting off our journey right here at home on the most frequented train route that Amtrak serves. That is the Northeast Corridor. And I went ahead and I took every single possible class of service on Amtrak's Northeast Corridor so that I could review them for you. And boy, do I have some thoughts. So stay tuned for all of that. Before we get started, if you like this content, go ahead and hit that little subscribe button. It is of no cost to you, but it is tremendously helpful to me as we help to grow this channel. Also, go ahead and leave a like, leave a comment, hit that little notification bell so you don't miss any future MANTAR videos. I know you don't want to miss future MANTAR videos. I have a really exciting trip coming up that I'm leaving for at the end of next week. I will be documenting that entire trip and posting the video ASAP on this channel, so you don't want to miss that. So go ahead and do all the YouTube things so that you don't miss it and so that you help me out along the way. So without further ado, let's check out Amtrak's Northeast Corridor in every class of service you can possibly take, the Northeast Regional and the Acela train, on the latest episode of MANTAR Global, starting right now. So, our journey begins in my hometown of New York City, in the heart of Midtown Manhattan at New York's Penn Station, in the somewhat new Moynihan Train Hall. For so long, Penn Station, New York has been underground completely, underneath Madison Square Garden, with absolutely nothing grand about the station. Large transit hubs tend to boast large, ornate, and beautiful stations, and Penn Station just hasn't had that for years. And as you can see from the outside, it is somewhat grander than the former completely underground station, with its large columns and very visible presence. And New York Penn Station / Moynihan Train Hall is the only place in the 5 boroughs of New York City that you can pick up an Amtrak train. There are other commuter rails that run out of the station that have other stops in New York City, but not Amtrak. So I head over to the boards to find my train. Today we are on train number 155, the Northeast Regional train en route to Washington, D.C.
Well, good morning. I am here in New York's Penn Station. The new Moynihan Train Hall opened in 2021 for service. This is in an old post office, but it has been converted into the new part of Penn Station. As you can see, it's relatively new, modern, nice, high glass ceilings. And I am waiting to board the Northeast Regional train to Washington, D.C. This is my first trip of this series. So for the first trip, I am traveling in the peasant class. So no special perks for me today, and we will get ready to head down to DC in the lowest class you can possibly get on the on this Northeast Corridor trip. So come join me and we'll have some fun.
So as I said, the peasant class, no lounge access. I was just sort of standing there until they called my train, and they did so on time, track 15. And again, because I was traveling in coach, I had to wait on the long line. So for this route, you can almost guarantee yourself a long line if you're not in a higher class of service, because it is very, very heavily traveled route. You will be with the masses trying to all board the same train as you, so you may be waiting in line for a while. Another thing to note about Amtrak coach class, and this is true, I believe, of most of Amtrak coach class services, is that the seats are not assigned. So when you board your train, assuming you're in a coach class car, you can take any open seat, which can be nice if the train is not that busy. But if it is a very crowded train, like the trains on the Northeast Corridor, you are going to find yourself in possibly an undesirable seat. And if you're traveling alone, you will almost certainly be sitting next to someone. So as expected, I was on a very crowded train, and for a moment there, I thought that I was going to not have a seatmate. At the very last minute before they closed the doors, someone did sit next to me. As you can see, the coach seats are in a 2-2 configuration, so that's much better than flying in an economy seat when you may have anywhere from 3 to 5 seats in any particular row. And the seats are quite big. There is more than enough legroom, especially for the lowest class of service. And all seats do come standard with a little tray table so that you can eat and drink. The seat also does have 2 standard US outlets. For me, that was very nice because I was at the window seat. It's a little bit awkward if you're on the aisle and you don't know your seatmate, because you do kind of have to plug your electronic in. If you're using the outlet, you kind of have to reach over. If you do need to charge something up, I would suggest trying to find a window seat if you possibly can if you're traveling alone. Right on time, we were pulling out of Penn Station into the Hudson River tunnels and off into the New Jersey leg of the trip to start ourselves off. There is a cafe car on the Northeast Regional train, so if you didn't bring your own food and you're a little bit hungry or just want to get yourself something to drink, you can head over to the cafe car and there is food and drink for purchase. I was planning to have a big lunch in DC, so I didn't want to eat too much on the train, but I was a little hungry, so I got myself the yogurt parfait, a cup of coffee, and a bottle of water. The parfait was, well, it was edible. I have some experience with Amtrak food, and it is not the best food. I will just come right out and say that. The best way to describe it is it kind of just feels like a step below even cafeteria food. It's just not the best quality, but I did have my cup of coffee, and that's about it as far as amenities go in coach class. Like I said, there's no lounge access in the station. There's a pretty standard seat, and if you want to eat something from the cafe car, you will have to purchase it. My parfait, my coffee, and my water came out to $12.50. And I tipped the nice Amtrak attendant because I'm a softie, so I ended up spending $14.50. Other than that, it's just really looking out the window, maybe having a little nap and enjoying your trip. And before long, we were arriving in Washington, D.C. Union Station. Compared to New York Penn Station, and even compared to Moynihan Train Hall, Washington, D.C. has a beautiful Amtrak station. The architecture is grand with a white dome ceiling with this sort of hexagonal pattern, and everything about it seems to want to just kind of display class and upscale travel. Whether or not the upscale travel is still on the trains leaving the station, that's another story, but the station is beautiful.
All right, well, welcome to Washington, D.C. Union Station. I have just completed my peasant trip. That is my coach class trip. That was a interesting ride. It was very crowded. I thought I had the row to myself, and I was very, very quickly disabused of that notion. And yeah, just the basics on my way to DC. So I'm gonna go get some lunch. You guys are gonna come with me, and then I'm going to head back to New York on a Northeast Regional train in business class. So let's check out DC for the next few hours.
So I've been to DC quite a few times. It's not really a tourist destination for me anymore. It might be for some of you, but it is always kind of awe-inspiring to walk out of the station and right ahead of you see the United States Capitol building.
You know, it was nice and sunny when I left New York this morning. It got a little cloudy overhead. So, oh well. Let's see if, I think I have a few minutes. Let's go see if there's any cherry blossoms. It is springtime in Washington, D.C. All right, well, it's a little early for peak cherry blossom season, I think, but I'm just guessing with no expertise on that, but looks like it's a little early for it. I'm gonna head out of here though, because there's a crackhead screaming over there. Look how pretty. All right, well, I think we will make this a train kind of day. So I was thinking about walking to the restaurant, but it looks like it's like a 50-minute walk, so that's probably not gonna happen. But I'm gonna go ahead and take the DC Metro over to Founding Farmers. It's a kind of a famous restaurant in DC, I guess. I've eaten there once before, full disclosure, the last time I was here, but we're gonna go have lunch there.
The DC Metro is sort of your classic subway system in the US. It is smaller than the New York City subway system, but it's efficient and it can get you where you need to go. And so with a short Metro ride out of the way, I made my way to Founding Farmers Restaurant. Shout out to Founding Farmers. Thank you all so much for having me. It was a pleasure. Treated myself to a little Bloody Mary. Yes, I still don't drink. There's no alcohol in that. And I had myself a nice breakfast platter of 2 eggs, bacon, hash browns, and a piece of French toast. I'll leave a link for Founding Farmers Restaurant in the description below, as I will with the restaurant I went to in Boston. And before you know it, my quick lunch was over and I was on my way back on the DC Metro, on my way to Washington Union Station for the second leg of my trip. And here we are back again in Union Station, taking train number 168, leaving at 3:25 p.m. the Northeast Regional towards Boston, although I'm only going to go to New York. And we are taking this leg of the trip in the Northeast Regional business class car. Now, one thing to know about business class on the Northeast Regional train is that your ticket does not get you lounge access. So once again, I did not have lounge access while waiting for my train, but I got to the station pretty close to the departure, so that didn't bother me too much. Now, another thing to know about business class on the Northeast Regional is that you do get priority boarding, which is a major thing. Remember before I was talking about those long lines on this route? Well, with business class, you get to skip that entire line. So I was pretty quickly on the platform ahead of the other passengers and not stressing and walking calmly to my accommodations for the afternoon. Now, the other thing to note about this business class product is that unlike the coach seat, you are actually assigned to your seat in the business class car, which makes things a lot easier. When you're first ticketed at the time of your purchase, Amtrak will assign you a seat for your journey, but it is very easy in the Amtrak app to go and hit change seat, and you can go and look at all the available seats and pick your desired seat from the moment you're ticketed on your trip. Now, I think you'll probably share my impression that the seat itself doesn't look much fancier than a seat in coach class, but upon further review, when I sat down in the seat, I did notice a few nice things. One, even though coach has a lot of legroom, business class has significantly more legroom that you can just really stretch out in the business class section on this train. The other thing that was really nice is that the seats recline pretty far, and that makes sense because with all that legroom, the seats are spaced pretty far apart, so you don't feel like you're encroaching on the passenger behind you just by reclining your seat. So those two things were very nice. Other than that, you have your standard tray table and you have your standard outlet just like you have in coach.
So the conductor just made an announcement that this is going to be a very full train, and there's everybody has to make room next to them and put their bags away and everything. And hasn't really been chaos in the business class section. That's probably the nicest thing about this is very, very quiet in this car, not much activity. But if it's anything like the train I came out here on, then it's probably a madhouse in the coach cars. So that's the biggest perk. That's the biggest perk of sitting here.
So I was trying to be quiet in that clip to not disturb my fellow passengers, but in case you missed any of that, probably the biggest perk of riding in business class on this train is that the car is not so highly trafficked. The coach cars are slammed on so many of these trips because it's a popular route, but the business class car tends to be quieter, or at least it was in my experience on this day. While I think that business class on this train is not the blitzed up, glammed up upgrade that one might think of when they hear the term business class. I think it's very, very undervalued how you can be in a calm, easygoing train car on a train that is otherwise packed and full of people. And again, right on time, we were off to the races. My trains were super on time that day, and it was very much appreciated. So, what kind of amenities do you get for traveling in the higher priced business class section? Well, as I already mentioned, you do get to board the train first. But another amenity while you're on the train is that your non-alcoholic beverages from the cafe car are completely comped. You still have to purchase food, which I find interesting because business class is the highest class possible of service on the Northeast Regional train, which means there is no option for free food anywhere on the train. So, no matter what, if you're hungry and you don't have your own food, you're buying food at the cafe car. But the free beverages were a nice thing. All you gotta do is show the attendant that you have a business class ticket and you are given your beverages for free. Although if you have some cash on you, it is nice to leave a little tip, especially if you're getting the free drinks. And before you know it, we were approaching New York City's Penn Station and closing out the business class Northeast Regional leg of this trip.
Okay, and that is a wrap on the Northeast Regional train in coach class and business class. I would say that business class is worth it for me, but it might not be worth it for others. But yeah, that's the end of the day's jaunt over to Washington, D.C.
So, next up is Amtrak's Acela service. Now, Acela is Amtrak's most premium train on the tracks, having only a business and first class section. There is no coach section on the Acela train. The Acela serves the exact same corridor as the Northeast Regional, Washington, D.C. to Boston. Some of the Northeast Regional trains will extend to other parts of Massachusetts and will extend down to Virginia. The Acela does not do that because the Acela must be on electrified tracks, which is only from Boston to Washington, D.C. The Acela also makes way fewer stops than the Northeast Regional train. I'll get to that in my review at the end of this video. So here we go, resetting to 1 and Moynihan Train Hall, New York City.
Okay, good morning. We are back in New York's Penn Station for the Acela leg of this video, and we are getting on the 10:02 a.m. en route to Boston in Acela business class, which is basically the peasant class on Acela. There is no lower class of service. Now I'm going to cheat a little bit this morning because I do not automatically get lounge access with Acela business class, but I do have a little lounge pass in my Amtrak account, and the Metropolitan Lounge in Penn Station is worth it, and I want to get maybe a little bite to eat or something. So I'm going to cheat a little bit and use my lounge pass, so come on with me.
Yes, I know, I cheated, but the Metropolitan Lounge in New York is very nice, and it's a much nicer place to wait for the train than just standing on the floor of the train hall. But it is important to note that if you do not have some kind of coupon to access the lounge, Acela business class does not get you lounge access. You must have a first class ticket in Acela in order to access the lounge. You also can access the lounge with certain sleeping accommodations on long distance trains, but that's the subject of another video. So you enter the lounge, you show either your lounge pass or your ticket that entitles you to lounge access to an employee in the front. And as you can see, it's very nice and civilized up in the lounge. There is plenty of comfortable seating. There are some small food and beverage items that are available to you if you have access to the lounge. They are free. And there's even a little balcony with some tables overlooking the rest of the station. So you can kind of feel high and mighty up on that balcony looking out over the hordes of people who do not have access to the place that you do. I got myself a little coffee and a little fruit cup because, again, the food options are sub-cafeteria food standard. They're little microwave sandwiches and what looked like stale bagels, to be honest with you. And pretty quickly it was time to go ahead and board my train. Now, just like my coach class trip, business class, being the lowest class of an Acela train, does not entitle me to any kind of priority with boarding, so I went ahead and stood in the long line to get down into the train. And right off the bat, you can see it's a more modern, nicer looking train, which is saying something considering these trains have been in service since the year 2000. Acela entered service December 11th, 2000 and has used the same train sets since. Now, Acela is planning to roll out in the year 2024 a completely new fleet of trains. So you know that's going to be a MANTAR video when they roll these new trains out, because I'm going to have to try it and see what the updates look like. But for now, we're on the original Acela train sets. Heading into the business class car and looking for my seat. All seats on Acela trains are assigned, so this is a difference from the Northeast Regional train. There is no class of service on Acela that does not have assigned seating, which again is very nice because when I booked the tickets, I was able to go into the app and switch my seat from a seat that I didn't like, and I really didn't like the seat they assigned me, into a seat that I liked better. These seats are mostly laid out in a 2-2 configuration, so if it's a crowded train, you will have a seatmate. And some of the seats are 2 and 2 facing each other with a table in the middle. So if you're traveling with a group of 3 or 4, that's a really nice option so that you can all kind of sit around the table and speak to each other. My seat had a nice little curtain, which was handy if you wanted to block out the window and the light. I did not want that, so I didn't use it, but it was a nice touch. And this was a much less crowded train than the train I took to DC, so I actually got away with not having a seatmate the entire trip. As with the Northeast Regional trains, there is ample legroom on the Acela. Each seat comes standard with a little tray table, and there are power outlets at every seat. Now, this train was about 10 minutes late departing New York, but no biggie. We got underway and headed towards the East River tunnels into Queens as we started our journey north towards Boston. Now, every Acela train does have a cafe car. It's called Cafe Acela, and it is a much nicer looking cafe car than the Northeast Regional cafe cars. However, I found the menu to be, well, exactly the same as the menu on the Northeast Regional train. So, not wanting to really brave the food again, I just went ahead and I bought a mineral water. Now, I just have to pause for a moment and say that the New York to Boston leg is significantly more scenic than the New York to DC leg. It is absolutely stunning with the views. You get all these sort of New England looking seaports and coastline, and it's just really, really beautiful to look at. And again, that's pretty much it for the amenities. As I sort of jokingly said before, business class on the Acela is the sort of peasant class of the Acela train. There is no free food, there's no free beverages, you know, I had to pay for my mineral water in the cafe car, and there's no lounge access. But the seats are a little bit more comfortable, and in addition to being the sort of premium train and making a lot fewer stops, Acela is also officially the only high-speed train currently in the United States. And the New York to Boston leg has the highest speeds that Acela can reach. It does only reach those speeds though between Providence and Boston, but between Providence and Boston, man, we flew. On this section of track, the Acela reaches speeds of 150 miles per hour, which does qualify it as a high-speed railway. On the flip side, the section of the New York to Boston route that operates on Metro North's tracks, that is the section between New Rochelle and New Haven, is absolutely painstakingly slow. And that's because it's a very, very heavily trafficked Metro North train line. And so the Acela just can't reach very high speeds on that. So it is the trade-off, but once you get past Providence, Rhode Island, man, 150 miles per hour and you can feel it. And before you know it, we were reaching Boston South Station and the end of our business class Acela leg of this journey.
All right, guys, welcome to Boston. I have made it on the third leg of this trip. That was Acela business class. Again, the lowest class of service on the Acela train. And I'm gonna go have some lunch at a place close by the station. So come with me for that. And then we have our final leg for the video coming up after that. So let's go.
Now, I've always said I hated Boston. My whole life I've said that. And to be fair, I haven't been to Boston very many times. And I think my disdain for Boston, well, it comes from two things. One, I'm a New York Yankees fan, so, Boston has our rival team. So that's one thing. But joking aside, the other reason I've always kind of said I hated Boston is that the streets make no sense. I am very, very good with directions usually, but I cannot figure out directions in Boston. All the streets are like curvy and windy, and then they stop, and then suddenly it's something else, and I just can't figure it out. So it frustrates the hell out of me. But maybe it was because we were on a beautiful spring day and I was just in a good mood. But I took an Uber over from the train to Cafe Bonjour where I was having lunch, and I have to be honest, it was kind of pretty. So I arrive at my lunch spot, Cafe Bonjour, and my apologies to Founding Farmers, but as far as the lunch places I'm reviewing in this video, Cafe Bonjour just blew it out of the water. They were absolutely delicious. I had myself a nice Norwegian eggs Benedict, which is basically smoked salmon instead of Canadian bacon, with some potatoes and a little side salad. And the ingredients you could just taste were fresh and hearty. It was just delicious.
All right, so I just ate at Cafe Bonjour. It's a really, really nice little cafe, very close to South Station. I took an Uber there because I wasn't sure where I was going, but it is walking distance from South Station, so I'm walking back to the station now. Really, really nice place. I was chatting with the owner. He was very, very lovely, and apparently that place is always slammed, so highly recommend it to anybody who's in the Boston area. 55 Temple Place, Cafe Bonjour. Okay, back to the train.
So we arrived back at Boston South Station, and I have now a first class Acela ticket for the ride home, which entitles me to a whole host of benefits, the first of which is lounge access. The lounge was very nice. It was a weekday at about 3 p.m. and it was not crowded. As you can see, there's plenty of seating and it looks like self-service drinks. And just as I was sinking into a seat and starting to relax, they called my train, so I headed towards the track to board Acela first class for my trip home. Now, with a first class ticket on Acela, you do get priority boarding. I did get to skip the line and headed into my assigned seat. So again, this one is assigned. The first class car on Acela is in a 2-1 configuration, so you can select a seat that will not have a seatmate next to you. However, I was selecting my seat pretty late in the process, so the only seat left without a seatmate had a person sitting across from me with a table in the middle. So you do what you can. The guy was very nice and didn't bother me, so it was fine. The first class car also comes with a dedicated attendant and sometimes 2 dedicated attendants. They are there to take care of the first class passengers in terms of food, drinks, and anything else they need. So right away, I was offered a bottle of water, which I gratefully accepted. And pretty soon after that, I was offered a bowl of warm nuts and given a menu for the free meal that is included with your first class ticket on Acela. And as we headed off in the late afternoon into the outskirts of Boston, my drink order was taken. I asked for a flavored seltzer water, which they didn't have, so they graciously accommodated me with a mineral water and cranberry juice that I could mix for myself. And then about half an hour into the trip, they came around and took food orders. Now, full disclosure, I have actually traveled first class on Acela before. And the last time I traveled first class on Acela, I tried the beef bourguignon, which was not good. It was very salty and tasted like it came out of a microwave, and I just didn't like the way that it made me feel. So I went ahead and I skipped the hot food offerings on this, but I opted for the fruit and cheese plate. Now that was fine for me because I had just come off of that really nice lunch at Cafe Bonjour, so I actually wasn't even that hungry. And the fruit and cheese was just a very nice little nosh for the afternoon. It was perfect. And what's life without a little dessert? I also indulged in the tiramisu dessert that was on offer for the day. Now all of this, food, drink, bottle of water, bowl of nuts, everything like that, completely included in your ticket. So as I was saying before about business on the Northeast Regional only giving you free drinks, the premium product on Acela trains, the first class ticket, is all inclusive. Your food is also brought to your seat directly by the dedicated car attendants, as are your drinks and anything else that you might want. So that was very nice. And to round out after the meal, we were offered a hot towel service, which that is always appreciated. A nice way to just clean your hands and feel a little bit pampered after your meal. Now this train did feel a little bit more crowded than my train up to Boston in the morning, which is why, again, I was grateful to be in the first class car, because obviously that's only reserved for first class passengers. And so I had no idea if there were masses of people in the business class cars, but I would imagine that it's not as stressful as the coach class seats on the Northeast Regional, because at least the entire train is assigned seating. So you kind of know where you're going. There's no stress about that. You just sit where you're supposed to sit and you go. The Acela is overall a much nicer train than the Northeast Regional in any class of service that you use. And before long, we were getting the scenic views of Manhattan and pulling into New York's Penn Station to close out this trip.
All right, well, that is a wrap, everybody. That is every class of service along the Northeast Corridor. We did coach and business in the Northeast Regional, and we did business and first on the Acela. So that's it, guys. I'm a little tired, and I'm gonna go home and go to bed, and hope you all enjoyed.
Now, before I let you go, really quick, let me just do a little overall thoughts and what do I recommend and what do I not recommend. Okay, well, first and foremost, I recommend the Acela train over the Northeast Regional by leaps and bounds. Even if you're seated in the business class section, you will have fewer stops, your train will go faster, you will get to your destination quicker, and you will have an assigned seat that eliminates a lot of stress when you're boarding the train. The trains are also nicer and newer, and to be perfectly honest, the Northeast Regional train cars, they're a little bit old, they're a little bit musty, and it's just a little bit of a smell. You can also get pretty frustrated at the amount of stops that the Northeast Regional trains are making. They tend to make a lot of stops that the Acela trains just don't make. So if you're looking to just get where you're going quickly, I would recommend the Acela. All right, my second recommendation. If you're traveling on the Northeast Regional train, it is worth it to travel in business class to avoid crowds. Now, worth it is relative, right? And the ticketing prices can vary significantly from train to train, depending on demand and depending on a whole host of factors that Amtrak probably has an algorithm about. So if you're traveling along the Northeast Corridor and the business class ticket is, let's say, more than $50 more than the coach ticket, then it's not worth it, right? Endure a little bit of stress and save your money. But in my opinion, and everybody's gonna have their own sort of threshold of what's worth it, but in my opinion, $50 or less to have a business class ticket is worth it. Now, it's not worth it because of a whole host of amenities, right? It's like, okay, free drinks from the cafe car, free non-alcoholic drinks from the cafe car. Okay, great. That's a nice thought, but it's not the at-seat dedicated attendant service that you're gonna get in Acela first class, right? It's just, you get up, you go to the cafe car, and your non-alcoholic drinks are comped. Okay. But the priority boarding, the assigned seat, and the absence of huge crowds makes a big difference, in my opinion. It just relieves a lot of stress from your trip. My third recommendation, if you can get yourself into Acela first class, do it. But don't pay exorbitant amounts for Acela first class. A lot of times, unfortunately, the fare difference between business and first class on the Acela is upwards of $100. And I don't think it's $100 worth. Yes, you get an at-seat meal. Maybe the value of that meal is $25, $30. And there's a drink and a hot towel service. Okay, bump that up to $40, $50. And I would even go so far as to say 60 to 75 to even 80 on the high end is probably worth it to get yourself a seat in Acela first class. Not beyond that. The business class car, you still get your assigned seat and you still get a high-speed trip. But two little hacks for getting into Acela first class without paying an exorbitant amount. One, if you're an Amtrak Guest Rewards credit card holder, you get one upgrade coupon per year. Now that upgrade is good from coach to business on most of their trains or Acela Business to Acela First. It is valid on a one-way leg, not on a round trip, so you'll have to choose which train you want to upgrade on. And it is also only good 12 hours before the train leaves. So if the first class car is full 12 hours before the train leaves, you won't get an upgrade with this coupon. But if it's not full, you will get upgraded into the first class car or into a business class car on another Amtrak route. The other way to get an upgrade coupon is with your Amtrak Guest Rewards points. Now, right now, as of the making of this video, you can spend 2,500 Amtrak Guest Rewards points for an upgrade coupon that works the same as the one I just mentioned you get with your credit card. It's basically 12 hours in advance, and it's good from coach to business on most Amtrak routes or from Acela Business to Acela First. So that'll cost you 2,500 Amtrak Guest Rewards points. As of the making of this video, they're always changing things, so don't quote me anytime in the future. You're gonna have to look it up yourself. But as of this taping, that is a way to also upgrade yourself into an Acela First Class. The 2,500 point coupon is also good only for one way. So if you want to upgrade both legs of a round trip, you're gonna have to spend 5,000 points. Or if you have the credit card and you have a coupon, you can use the coupon from your credit card and use a 2,500 point coupon, and then you can be upgraded on both legs. There's ways to do it. And of course, the other way to cheaply get into a first class seat is to simply buy an Acela First Class ticket outright with your Amtrak Guest Rewards points. I did that once in the past, and it cost me roughly 10,000 Amtrak Guest Rewards points. So those are my recommendations. Again, these recommendations are based on my taste and my taste alone. I know there are plenty of people out there who do not want to spend valuable dollars and or loyalty points for these upgrades and are totally fine roughing it in the lowest class of service, and you want to just cheap. If that's what's good for you, then God bless you. I wish you well. And that's about it, folks. That's all she wrote. So thank you all for sticking with me. I hope you learned some interesting travel tips on this video. Leave a comment down below if you've traveled on these routes and what your experience is. Are they different from my experience, or have you had roughly the same experience? I'd love to know your thoughts. Remember to give this video a thumbs up if you like this kind of content, and to go ahead and subscribe and ring that little notification bell. Again, I have a really fun travel video coming up in the next few weeks. You're not gonna wanna miss that, and I'll leave that as a surprise for now. But until then, and until we meet again, everyone out there in YouTube land, I hope you have a wonderful afternoon, evening, night, morning, whatever time of day you're watching this. I love you all very much, and I will see you on the next one. Bye-bye.